Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Effective Leadership Strategies in the Workplace. So, today we're going to be talking about inclusion. Inclusion, which is the process or the policy of providing equal access to people who may have otherwise been marginalized or excluded. So, you're talking about access to resources, to support, to information to people. And I would even challenge a little bit that term equal access to equitable access. And we talked about equity in our last session and the difference between equity and equality. So that is what inclusion is. So that now we've talked about diversity, we've talked about equity and equality, and we're talking about inclusion today. Inclusion is a very important leadership competency. And when we say leadership competency, we're talking about skills that help to strengthen leadership. So there's no one set of competencies for organizations. I think there's some foundational competencies that you're looking for, and some organizations will separate them out by leader of self or self-leadership skills, leaders of others, and those skills that you need in order to lead others, and then leadership or leader in the organization, and those skills that you need to help provide an organization stability and help to that organization to be sustainable. So there's competencies that are separated into those areas, as well as global competencies now, because we are a global society, and we know that there's a return on investment when we kind of reach out and when we have our organization reach into other organizations, other resources, and other people across the globe. So for the purpose of today, we're going to talk about inclusion and competencies in the areas of self, others or teams, and the organization. When we talk about leading the self, one of the key leadership skills that we're going to be talking about is increasing self-awareness. And why are we talking about self-awareness? Well, self-awareness is the very thing that you need to hold a mirror to identify whether you yourself have some inherent unconscious biases, based on your own personal or professional experiences from the past. What biases are you holding which is impeding your ability to find the value in including other people that may not look like you, think like you, or act like you in a professional setting? Everyone has biases. Sometimes, people will say, well, it's an unconscious bias, so how will I know? Because it really requires a period of self-examination, asking yourself difficult questions. Do I value someone who has education more than someone who may not have as much education? Do I value someone who may have more work experience in this particular area more than someone else who may have a different work experience in a different area? Do I value someone that looks more like me than someone that looks more like you? Do I value someone that comes from the same background or speaks the same language or has the same gender or sexual orientation? Or do I value people that are different than me? Asking yourself, and you don't have to broadcast that or advertise that to other people, but asking yourself and really being honest and transparent with yourself about whether or not you value those things in other people. That's a way to kind of crack into that self-awareness and to really understand or identify whether you yourself have some unconscious biases. When you're able to honestly and transparently identify that to yourself, you become more self-aware and you become more able to identify ways to provide inclusion and inclusive opportunities for people that don't look like you do. When we talk about leading others, one competency that we're going to focus on is valuing diversity and inclusion. Do you really value and understand the importance of a diverse and an inclusive team? What does that bring to you or to your team? How does that make your team stronger, more competitive, and give your team an advantage when you're presenting to your leaders, when you're trying to share certain strategies or ideals about how to move forward, when you're trying to really make your point? How does that period or that episode or how does that piece of diversity and inclusion strengthen your team? How does it give you the competitive advantage? So when you're leading others, I really want you to think about making your team as inclusive and as diverse as possible, because those differing perspectives, those differing ideas, those differing experiences, both personal and professional, help to give you the competitive advantage. It helps to bring in different ideas that you may not have even wanted to consider before, or that you may not have been able to consider before because you don't have that life experience. You don't have that work experience. So including people that come from different backgrounds, different cultures, different ethnicities, different genders, including people that are different than you. And when I say inclusion, I don't just mean, sitting at a table and saying, well, let's think about all the people that look different than me or act different than me. I really want you to think about what skill set can this person bring to this table and bring to this team that's going to help us evolve, that's going to help us grow, that's going to give us the competitive advantage. So it's not just people that look differently than you, it's people that act and think and have different intentionalities than you do. That's what we're talking about when we're thinking about inclusion, and being willing to hear and consider and incorporate ideals that are different than yours. And that's hard sometimes when you think that you have the right ideal because of how you were raised or your work experience or your professional experience, and someone else from a different gender or someone else from a different culture or a different background is coming in and saying, hang on, because that's one perspective. That's one way of looking at it. So think about the power that comes from including lots of different perspectives and insights and ideals about how things should or could happen through collaboration and through community. And so that's an important competency for you in terms of bringing in inclusion in your team. Now, when we think about leading the organization, we go to much more macro level, right? Micro, we're really honing in on those things that are most immediate and closest to us. Macro are those things that are on a broader scale. You're going to have more impact or impact on a different level when you're looking at macro, because as a leader on a macro level, you're talking about things that are going to impact the organization as a whole. So one of the competencies for inclusion and for leadership on a macro level in terms of leading the organization is managing politics and influencing others. Now, of course, there are going to be politics that are involved in the organizational makeup and kind of a social dynamic that's involved in the organizational makeup. But the competency that leaders need to have is the ability to influence others. And it doesn't mean, make people think or make people act the way that you would think or act in a particular situation. It means the ability to bring in those probing questions, to influence people so that they can understand your viewpoint, so they can truly hear and think about how that viewpoint came to be. Think about, why would this be beneficial to us as an organization? How is this going to impact our sustainability? How will this help us with employee engagement and retention so that we become kind of a leader in the workforce or a leader in the industry? So it's influencing other people to see your point of view, to believe in your point of view, and to buy in your point of view, your practice, your policy, your system. And it's including people from different arenas. When you can cross over disciplines and when you can kind of bridge that gap and include people that look different than you, act different than you, have a different work experience than you, then that's true inclusion. And you can help them to buy into that vision so that they truly understand, and they can go out and be a stakeholder for you. They can go out and share that vision in a way that's convincing and in a way that's supportive through that collaboration. Then you've got real inclusion. So I hope that helps to clarify how inclusion kind of weaves its way through the leadership competencies. If you have any questions about inclusion in the workplace and effective leadership strategies to build an inclusive environment and an inclusive workforce in your organization, please reach out. You can leave a comment here on this YouTube channel, or you can reach out to me at Melanie@Engage and Lead. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next week.